Hi everyone, welcome tonight. My name is Bartek Ziemba and I'm a mobile software tester at the Wodem. And tonight I'll be talking about the testing mobile native applications and the challenges related to them. Also I want to mention a bit more about whether we should test on the real devices or emulators or simulators. And I want to talk a little bit about testing on cloud platforms. And also I want to give you a quick introduction to the frameworks in order to test our applications automatically. So before I start, I want to give you a quick introduction about my company. So on Novoda, we are the digital consultancy based in London, where I'm currently working. Also, we have offices in Berlin, Barcelona, and Liverpool. So what we do, we are trying to solve the problems of our clients with technology, mostly by designing and building the native applications for Android and iOS platforms. So before I jump into the native applications, I want to give you a quick introduction into the different types of the mobile applications, which are the web mobile apps. So the web mobile applications are built with the web technologies like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And what's cool about them is they don't occupy any storage on our physical devices as we run them from the browsers. We need the internet connection to run them. And they are quite cheap to build, as we don't need to build them across the different platforms. Second type of the mobile applications are the hybrid ones. And they are quite popular for the cross-platform development, as we still build them with the web technologies, but we are just adding the native container. So the web code is shared between the different platforms, and we are just adding the native code to them, so they are still quite cheap to develop. And let's start with the native applications. So we need to build them per platform specifically. So we need like specified theme of the iOS, Android, or Windows Phone the specialist. And we build them with the native technologies like Java or Kotlin for Android, Swift and Objective-C for iOS, or C# for Windows Phone. And in order to build them, we need the Android Studio, Xcode, or Visual Studio. So native apps provide the best user experience and the performance. Depending on the functionality of your application, we may not need to have the internet connection to run them. So imagine you have the application that you're just adding the items to the list, like shopping list or something, which has like very basic functionality. You don't need the internet connection for it. With the native apps, we are able to use the technologies like augmented reality, machine learning, or Internet of Things. So, for example, we can build the application for your watch, car, or some like home appliances like a fridge or oven. But there's one drawback of building the native app. They are the most expensive ones to build. As I said before, you need to have separate team of Android specialists or iOS specialists. So that costs. So here a quick comparison between the web and native application. On the left you see the web one, Twitter, runs from the browser. It needs the internet connection in order to start it. The one on the right is the native Twitter app. Probably you will get the login screen without the internet connection, but you will not be able to perform any interactions for it.
Prośba, żebyś trochę bliżej mikrofon trzymał, bo z tyłu ciężko cię słuchać, albo głośniej, żebyś... Tutaj jest moment, tak? Nie, jest tak.
start with the some challenges that mobile software testers may face when they are starting their career with testing the mobile apps. So first one, we have a big number of the manufacturers of the mobile devices on the market, like some of the leaders like Samsung, Apple, HTC, or Huawei. And we have some a bit less known ones like Oppo or OnePlus and Xiaomi. They are making a huge results mostly on the Asian markets, but then they are getting more and more popular in Europe. So as a software testers, we need to remember to test all those ones as well. With the big number of manufacturers come a big number of the different models of those devices, and so which makes a big combination of those. We have another challenge that is various operating systems that our application can run on. The most known ones are the Android, iOS, Windows Phone, BlackBerry, and Firefox. But actually, here we have a good news. As we can see, most the Android and iOS platforms cover the whole market. So probably when we will test our mobile apps, it will be Android or iOS. And there's another problem with the operating system. We have still a big problem mostly on Android, which is called fragmentation. That means that there are many devices on the market that can run old version of the Android. And here we have some statistics. On the left one we have the Android one. And when we look at for example, on the Lollipop Android version, which is 3 years old, we can see that there's still 25% of the devices globally that run this version of the OS. And what's quite surprising is the Oreo, which is the newest Android version. It's not even 1% of the devices that's running this version. And when we compare it with the newest one, iOS 11, which been released in September last year, there's a huge difference between them, and we can easily see that Apple manages the deployment of the operating system version to their devices much better. And the reason for that is that they are not only producing the software, but they are also building their own hardware, like iPhones and iPads. So another challenge for mobile software testers is the number of the different screen resolutions and orientation, and so we need to make sure that our application still works and behaves and performs well on the smaller devices and the big devices like tablets, and we need to make sure that the user experience is the same on both. Another challenge for us when testing the mobile apps is the different data connection types. So our apps may run under the different conditions of the and strength of those connections. Like we can run the apps on 2G, 3G, 4G, Wi-Fi, LTE networks, and so we have a choice. We can drop our device, hide ourselves somewhere under the bridge or in the cellar, and try to simulate those conditions. But fortunately, we have a tool which allows us to simulate this connection type. And personally, I've been using network link conditioner tool when testing the iOS apps, so it allows you to simulate this kind of connection, and you can verify how your application is working. And also, it turns out that the 3G, for example, in Poland, works a bit differently than the 3G in Thailand. So you can travel the world testing your applications, how it's performing, or you can use the tool called proxy only. And so it allows you to connect with the different data providers from other countries, and under those conditions you can test your app as well. The last challenge when testing the mobile apps are the interruptions. So here we are talking about the situations when you're chasing your Pokemon around the park and your mom calls you, or when you're watching the YouTube video and you get the push notification from the other application, and not these ones also, but you have more like when you plug your charger to the device or unplug it, on when your device goes into the like low battery mode. So as a mobile software testers, we need to consider those kind of situations and see how our applications handle that. So yeah, we found out about most of the challenges that we may face as a mobile software testers. So if you think about the number of combinations you may have with the various types of devices of those manufacturers, different models, operating systems, resolutions, etc. You have a huge number of different combinations, and what you can do is you can buy hundreds of devices, pick up the random one, start testing it like this kid is doing very quickly, because you cannot really focus on one device for a long time. Or you can come up with more reasonable solution and find out what devices your users use. So in order to do that, I personally have been using the analytical tool, like Google Analytics and Firebase. So Google Analytics was invented and created for the tracking mostly the web traffic, and analytics how users use our websites or web apps. And the Firebase till 2014, it's been a standalone company until Google decided to acquire it, and now they both belong to Google. So Firebase is not only the platform to manage the analytics, but it's the platform that allows you to manage all the activities you may think of when developing the mobile apps, like deploying them to the Play Store or managing the push notifications, for example. And there's one thing that connects them. So they are both working on the event-based data collection model. And the keyword here is the event. So event is every interaction that user performs with your application, like starting even from the installing it on the device by logging in, tapping each buttons, navigating to different views. And all of these events are recorded and gathered in those platforms. And to the business that's building the app, it gives us a huge data that allows us to see how our users are using this application. And based on this data, we can improve our applications to probably make more money out of it. But for us as mobile software testers, more important information is to find out what devices our users use. And here I have a few screenshots from the real project that's on the UK market. It's an Android application. So here we can, with the Google Analytics SDK implemented inside of this application, we can see that our users use the Samsung devices mostly, and that run the Android 7.0 version. And when we look, probably the reason for it is the table below. When we look at the first 5 devices that our users use, we can see that they are quite recent Samsung models. That's probably has been deployed, has been sold already with the Android 7.0 version, or they got the upgrade to that Android version. A bit more statistics that we can get with the Google Analytics is the information about the screen resolution. And the 2 other screenshots are from the Firebase, from the different Android project. So if we want to find out where our users are or who they are, we are getting some demographic data, like about their location, about their age, about their gender as well. So probably this information is good for the business to apply some different like marketing strategies and again improve our application. And also what's cool with the Firebase, we are they provide with the like instant crash reporting tool. So after a few seconds, the application crashes for our users. We as a development team we are getting the notification with the exact place in the code that our application crashed with the specified device model and the OS version that the crash happened, and also like with the number of the whole number of the users that's been affected by this crash. So we can quickly react to it, fix it, deploy it to the store, and make our users happy. Okay, so I'll quickly come back to the previous one. So as you can see with the analytical tool, we can address most of the challenges that I've been talking previously. We are able to find out about the manufacturers of the devices that our users use, specified devices models, operating system versions, screen resolutions, and also, I didn't mention it here, we can also get the information about the mobile data providers. So this is very powerful tool for us as software testers. Based on this data, we can plan our testing strategy in order to pick up right devices to test. So another topic I would like to discuss is whether we should test our apps on the simulators, real devices, or emulators. So a bit of terminology here. Real devices are the physical devices we keep in hand. Pretty straightforward, they run the software. But there's a bit of confusion between the simulators and emulators and what they are. So in most of the cases when you will test the Android apps, you will probably test them on emulators. And they are not only emulate the behavior of the software of your app, but they are emulating the behavior of the hardware of the real device itself. And on the other side, we have simulators, so we'll probably test our iOS applications on them, and they are only simulating the behavior of the application. So a few things to consider here to make a right decision. First one is the cost. So imagine the situation that you want to test the real devices. I did a quick calculation, and with the first 5 Samsung devices I showed you previously in the table, I would have to get like 10,000 zlotys to buy only those 5. And if you want to test on the real devices, you probably need to get the budget for it from your boss or the manager. And probably one of the questions he will ask you is like, why do you need that much money when you can test on the simulators or emulators for free? So you need to be prepared and have good arguments for it. And the first one will be performance. So you'll never get the same performance when testing the app when on simulators and or emulators when you use the real device. Second thing are the interruptions. Personally, I don't know the way to make a call to the emulator or simulator, or send the SMS there, or plug or unplug your charger. And there are more limitations. So in terms of the functionalities of the applications itself, you cannot really test. Imagine you have the application that needs to pair via Bluetooth to the external device. It can be headphones, for example. You are not able to do that with emulators or simulators. Personally, I've been working on a project when we had to do that, and we had an external device that's been placed in the car, and it's been tracking your route in order for the insurance company, so they could calculate your insurance policy and cost. And we had to use the real devices because we couldn't use the emulators or simulators for that. Maintenance. So here actually we have some much more bigger problems with real devices. Everyone who's been responsible for the devices of the company knows the pain of maintaining them. Like you need to keep them charged, you need to keep their OS versions stable, so someone will not update the OS randomly and will not be able to test on the old operating system's versions. And there's no really maintenance with the simulators or emulators, actually just run them from our laptops. And the next aspect is the user experience. So when performing some kind of like usability testing, I cannot imagine doing it by clicking on the simulator or emulator or to use my keyboard to do that. So you need to get the real feel and look of the applications, and I think it's very important to use the real device for it. Also, having the real devices can improve your collaboration with the developers. So when you find a bug, you just grab your real device, go to your developer's desk, and show it to her or him. And normally it stops. The classic answer works on my machine. Okay, so you achieve the success. You get the budget from your boss that you wanted. You have the 10K in your pocket, and you want to test your apps on the real devices. But actually, before you go to the store and spend this money, you can consider one more solution. So you can still test your apps on the real devices without maintaining them, and this solution is called cloud testing based solution. So basically, the cloud testing platforms are the platforms where we have the remote access to the hundreds of the various devices running different operating systems versions. They have different screen sizes, and we can access them remotely. And this is a kind of example of how your workflow may look like when using the cloud-based solutions. So we have the test lab. In that case, I use the example of the Fire-based test lab. So there are hundreds of devices waiting for you in order to perform the test for them, and somehow we need to install our applications on those devices, and for that we can use the Android Studio. So our application is pushed to those selected devices, and here we have two ways to perform the test. If you want to perform the test manually, we can just access these devices with the app installed on them, or when we run our tests automatically, there are tests running on those devices, and at the end we get a nice report with all the crashes, with the GIFs, images or videos. So again, before we make a decision, we need to consider a few aspects. First one is the cost, and we did a small investigation at Novoda, wherein we compared few main solutions that we have. It was a Xamarin, Fire-based test lab, and I think it was Amazon Cloud as well. And basically, there's no one answer which one you should choose, because they were different problems we faced with them. Some of them didn't support the testing frameworks for automation that we wanted to apply. Some of them supported only Android platform, and basically the cost varied between 1,000 or 2,000 zlotys per month. So if you remind that 10,000 zlotys which you would have to pay for those real devices, you need to consider for how long your project would run and for how long you will use those devices, then make a decision. Another thing to consider is the security. So imagine when you test, for example, bank application, it will be probably your client would have some concerns about sharing the application with the confidential information about it with some third-party company. For that, probably the in-house solution would be the better choice. as you have a bigger influence, like in terms of security and what levels of security you want to apply to those. The third one is the availability. So sometimes you may have the situations when running the test in the cloud that you need to wait for the device to be available, as you need to remember that you are sharing those devices with all the people around the globe. And you might, if you run your tests often, you might lose lots of time daily. The last one is a virality. So as I said previously, in the cloud you have huge number of devices waiting for you to perform those tests. And basically, if you decide for the in-house solutions, it depends on you how many devices you buy, then they are available to you. So, final decision, again, there's no good one answer. As I said previously, probably it depends for how long your project would run. If you know that, for example, you signed a contract for 2 years with your client and you run lots of tests, probably it makes more sense in terms of cost to buy those real devices and run your tests on them in-house. But if you have the short-term project, like 2 months or 1 month, but your client still wants to have the big test coverage in terms of the devices and the OS versions, you probably want to use the cloud-based solution. So now, just quickly about the testing, about the frameworks for the test automation. I personally have the experience with 2 of them. First one is the XCUI test to write the test for the iOS application, and the second one is Espresso for the Android application. So basically, those frameworks allow you to write your test in the way that your users would use them. They come with the set of the interactions like swipes, taps, scrolls. You can even simulate like the shaking of the device or changing the orientation of them. So they are very powerful. There's also a framework called Appium. I think it's the most popular now framework around the world, and mostly because it supports the most of the programming languages, and also it supports the cross-platform development for your test. So you can write one code, and by using annotations, you can specify that this case will run on iOS or Android. And last thing I want to mention is the Algorithm. It's the product of Google. So they want to be better than Apple in order to run the automation on iOS, and they are building their own framework. I've checked it out and it's looking very good, so soon they may be like very huge competitor of the Apple, and for now it looks very good, and I want to keep an eye on it because probably I will use it soon on my projects. And yeah, that's everything. So thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, let me know now, or you can drop me a line on bart@novoda.com.
Thank you very much. That was the first surprise. First presentation in English. Thank you. Oczywiście pytania Bartkowi można zadawać po polsku, żeby było jasne. Teraz zapraszamy na krótką przerwę. Często będziecie pytania.
Nie miałem. Podałeś program do symulowania prędkości internetu na iOS-a. A czy istnieje coś sensownego na Androida, najlepiej żeby się mogło dodawać telefonu?
Ja osobiście nie znam odpowiedzi, bo tam kolega zna odpowiedź.
Powiedziała, postawiła swoją łatwą implementację takiego software'u na litery, gdzie wstawiają interfejs programowania na stronę.
A to właśnie się od tego instalować.
Ale no to jednak musisz coś takiego zrobić, więc tam znajdujesz po prostu na literach. Masz tak właśnie, jak podasz komputer, możesz konfigurę zgrywać, możesz tworzyć takie QR-kody, gdzie na przykład wskazujesz na danym konkretnym tutaj, przez komputer damy QR-kod, to na przykład na danej kopii internecie. Jest takie wybudowane, to jest też dobre rozwiązanie.
Znaczy możesz to też zrobić tak, że na lokalnie instalujesz proxy i po prostu jak stawienia Wi-Fi łączysz się przez proxy. Na Windowsa czy to na iOS-a jest albo Fiddler, albo Charles. Charles jest tylko na Maca chyba.
Tak samo robisz z tym właśnie narzędziem. Też praksujesz.
To rozwiązanie ma tą watę, że spływanie w internecie wszystkiego w komputerze, więc
Nie, możesz puścić sobie tylko z jednego narzędzia.
nie mówię o tym
No tak, jeśli się chcesz w międzyczasie pracować sobie powiedzmy w przeglądarce, no to używanie na 2G połączenia może Cię wkurzyć mocno. Jeszcze jakieś pytania?
To w takim razie zapraszamy na przerwę.
Dzięki.